what can somebody really expect when they're coming to you? What sort of, I would say, if we put it in the technical world, lingo, the user journey. What sort of, user journey would somebody look at when they're coming to you for their
Mhm.
healing practices, or to understand how they can get back to nature, combat the stress or different issues that they're
Mm.
facing? What's the user journey like for them?
So basically, people come to me either as individuals because they have something that they particularly want to work at. So usually people, as you say, feeling tired, they're feeling stressed, they might feel overwhelmed, they might be not sleeping, they might not be feeling productive. They could be getting angry. So some people are getting angry, getting irritable, and want to look at that. They might be wanting to look at their career redirection, whatever. It's really depending on what they want to work on, depends on how I work with them. So I can either work with people online or I can work with people out and about, or while they're out and about, and I can be on the phone. I've done it all different ways. So I just wanted to share another story with you, if that's okay, because it will illustrate the user journey. So I had another gentleman who was a stockbroker in the city, and he was young. He was about 35 and he sadly had a stroke. So I took him out so that impacted on his mobility. So he had a slight limp in his leg and a slight slurring of his speech, and his memory had been a little bit affected. So we were sort of looking at physically improving his mobility, and he was having speech and language therapy, but he also wanted to start to think about getting back to work. So I took him out to a very lovely lake with some trees, and it was on uneven ground, so we were looking at his mobility as well, and he managed that really well. And then I took him to a very large circle of trees, and he was particularly worried. He had got into his profession because he wanted to please his father. He was very good at being a stockbroker, but he didn't like being a stockbroker. It didn't bring him joy. And I asked him what brought him joy, and he was very much into food, and he wanted to open a restaurant with a friend. So we were talking about his career and what he would go back to and how he would go back to it. So he was particularly worried about the long commute. He had an hour and a half on the underground in London to get to work and back. So I said, okay, let's look at that journey and how you can use that journey therapeutically. So what we did the majestic tree exercise, and I said, right, when he was leaning against the tree, I said, imagine that tree trunk is the metal pole that you get on the inside of the train. And I said, rather than sitting down, if you've been sat down or you're stood up all day, I said, try and stand against the metal pole when you're commuting, even if it's just for 5, 10 minutes. Close your eyes, think about your tree, think about your special space in nature, and think about your breath. So I gave him some tools to use, and I said, use that on the commute in. So on the commute in, you're going to use it to energize yourself so that by the time you get to work, you're full of energy, you're ready to go. And then you're going to do the same thing coming back on the train, but this time you're going to use it to decompress from your day and to de-stress. And then I contacted him a couple of weeks after he'd started back at work, and he used the tools that I gave him, and he found them very powerful. And he actually inspired me because he actually said, I'm going to go back to work as a stockbroker for 6 months, but then I'm going to make plans with my friend to open the restaurant I've always wanted to open. And then he said to me, you have to take this out to the world. He said, you have to use these nature tools that you've given me and shared with me and helped me to the world. So that really helped me on my journey to think, right, yes, I will. So that was about 15 years ago. So that's what really gave me the boot to help me. So often, Pulkit, we mirror things, we get things and people in our lives when we need to. So I helped him. He went back to work as a stockbroker, and I believe that 6 or 9 months later, he opened a restaurant with his friend. And he said, I'm going to tell my father I'm 35, I've had a stroke. I tried doing it your way. I want to do what brings me joy.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And quite often it's also about the nature of work that we choose, not, depending on the reason behind it, the place which got us there. But yes, it's really important to realize what you're not good at. A lot of
Yes.
people spend their time finding what they're good at. But even for me, it has been getting to this point has been what I'm not good at. And even the
Hmm.
journey for Anya Wellness, we started the very first thought or the idea of Anya Wellness was, I would say, miles away from what we are doing today. And
Yes.
it evolved from the place where we realized slowly and steadily with the team discussions happening with the advisors, sharing their thoughts. What's the team strength, aligning with or not aligning with? So that's where, we kept removing the things that really didn't give us the, confidence and was not part of our skill set. So my next question is, how can nature help an individual? And I'm coming from a point where we see a lot of people in our surroundings, probably our elders, when the time, as we were discussing at the starting of this podcast, that 15 years back, mental health issues were not really talked about. The awareness was not there. And that has led to people build up or evolve in a manner that for them it has been set like in a stone in the character settings, in the way they work, in the way the overall persona and vibe is. One, they're not happy with it, but they don't know how to better manage it or find a way out of it. And for them,
Hmm.
stress management often leads to a place where they would just burst out like a volcano when the stress reaches its epitome. And they don't know how to really, get out of this phase. They are not being helped. So how can nature be the answer for them?
Okay, so I'm going to give some examples of perhaps the military that I've worked with, because a lot of people in the military like to be outside, and often, if that role has taken away from them because they might have been in that role since they were 16, and for whatever reason they can't do it, so they can be quite explosive in terms of how they deal sometimes with their emotions, not just the military, but anyone, and particularly men, because often men will say, oh, I'm so and so, and what do you do? Men often define themselves by their job. And I often say we're people with skills, not just jobs, but kind of that's that kind of mentality. So I hear what you're saying about things get ingrained in us. So I would always say it's about taking yourself outside of that situation, getting outside and getting them doing something that it doesn't feel like, well, this is managing my stress. So, for example, I had an older gentleman recently who's had a sudden loss of vision, and most of his retirement hobbies are very visual. He needs to do some very accurate things. He can't do those things because they involve using tools like screwdrivers and all of that sort of stuff. And he can't see properly to use it and do it. So he's become a bit of a recluse. He's very angry, and it's impacting on his relationship with his family. And so naturally, he is feeling very frustrated and very explosive about, well, this isn't fair. What do I do? How can I manage it? And I basically sat outside in his garden. When you sit outside just in a garden with somebody, or just looking out even at the window, and talk to somebody about what are the other options, how best can you perhaps change what you're doing or do it in a different way. So even talking about, well, you've got all these years experience in doing this, there's lots of youngsters coming up that would love to know about how to do this, that and the other, so perhaps you could teach some of them. Or perhaps there's somewhere you can go where you're teaching it, even if you can't physically still do it in the same way, or perhaps they could help you to do part of it, so you're working together. So I think in that way it's about recognizing that nature just helps calm you down. I mean, they've done studies where your pulse rate will go down by about 5% just from being outside,
Mhm.
and your stress hormone, your cortisol, goes down by about 26%. And it
Wow.
often remains that way 5 days after you've been outside. Just getting somebody outside, they don't have to do talking. A lot of people don't want to do traditional counselling, for example. They don't want to have to rake a load of stuff up. And I'm not saying that counselling hasn't got its place, it has. But if you do it with another activity, or you do it in a different way, particularly for men, the male suicide rate has gone through the roof, particularly younger men. It's the largest cause of death in the under 40s for men. And if you've got to find a way of releasing that valve, but in a positive way. So there's so much that you can do just by getting outside or doing something outside, taking out your frustrations on the garden, or I don't know, making something or whatever it might be, planting a tree. It doesn't matter what it is, or even just talking to somebody outside, or just reflecting, getting it out of you can help. Or even writing, nature journaling is another useful tool that we can use, or voice recording if you can't write, just voice it out and then delete it. Just however it is that you express your emotions, find what works best for you. But if you can, try and do it when you're outside.
I would like to ask one of the final questions for this podcast, Maria, from you is we all talk about sustainable tourism that's now really catching up these days. During holidays, hills, forests are our first choice to go and have a vacation break.
Mhm.
But whenever we come back, we don't think about our actions in that area or space. Like Ladakh, one of the most amazing location to be, beautifully, one of the most beautiful locations to be. The amount of, trash that people have left out there,
Mm,
the amount of plastic waste you get to experience or witness on different beach out there or in forest when you move.
yeah.
We are going to heal from nature, but at the
Hmm.
same time, we are not healing the nature.
Mm,
We are leaving those wounds on nature. What are your
mm,
thoughts? How can we start healing the nature whilst we heal from nature as well?
mm. Well, as you say, if you see something and it's a bit of litter, then do your part and maybe pick it up and take it with you, even if you haven't left it. So I've been in places and spaces and I've picked up litter that's outside of my door or been left. I used to live near a beach and we used to have lots of tourists come in the summer and also at weekends. And although the council was very good and they would pick up, we'd also have the locals would go out and do litter pickups or beach cleans or whatever. And that can also be part of the sustainability practice for employers and offices. So you can have a bit of a team building activity, doing a beach clean or doing a litter pickup or whatever. So we can all do our part. And that also brings us closer together. So when you're doing that task, you're outside in nature. So we can all do that, so we benefit from it. We can have conversations whilst we're doing it. Nature benefits because we're cleaning up. And then obviously the other point is, well, why put it there in the first place? So we've got our own part to play in the sense of, how do we practice our own sustainability? How do we recycle the things that we have? Do we dispose of our rubbish and our supplies appropriately, and do we go for the more sustainable option even if it costs us a few pennies more?
Yep,
So we've all got our part to play.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that because I have seen a lot of people just littering around without any thought. They're just like, okay, the unconscious reaction or the action is they would have a chip, packet of chips, and once the packet is over, it's just straight away. The action is just throwing it away. It's not about looking for a dustbin or a trash bin and putting it over there. The default action is to just throw it away
Yeah.
without caring where it is going in the in your surroundings. And
Yeah.
at the end, you're living in your own surroundings. You're
Mm.
you're littering your own surroundings, but we often realize that.
Mm. And if you think about that, we are, as we said before, within, so without. So our bodies are a vessel for us and for our energy. And so if our surroundings reflect us, then if we're doing that without thinking and we're littering our planet in that way, then we're actually, the only thing that we're affecting really is ourselves and littering ourselves with unnecessary stuff. And I've also worked a lot with clients who are hoarders, for instance, serious hoarders, where you have to crawl in through a tiny little tunnel through the front door to get to see them. So, and again, there's a reason why people hoard, and that's another story. But so it's all about that control. It's that sense of control. We are in control of our health, and we can help control our environment, whether that's inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. But it has to start from within, because if we're not aware, if we're not even aware of our breath, then as you say, we're not going to think, some people are not going to think twice about, oh, well, I'll just throw my chip packet away because they think it doesn't matter.
Yep.
But if everybody on the planet threw a chip packet away, think how much litter that would be. So actually it does matter.
Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree. Like the place where I live, I have seen on the outskirts of the city, four
Mm.
huge trash piles becoming to the level of probably them being confused as a small hill-sized thing
Mm.
over there.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I myself personally, confused it when it was a foggy morning. I confused
Yeah,
that trash pile to be a hill. And once the sort of fog disappeared, I realized that, okay, it's not a hill, it's a proper trash pile that I'm looking at.
yeah.
So we all need to start keeping a check on the actions that we have so
Mhm.
that the nature can still retain its healing power. If the nature is
Yes,
itself ill, it will not be able to help us heal.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And Maya, thanks a lot for, sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. Any final thoughts that you have for our listeners?
I would just say that no matter how small that you bring nature or vitamin N into your life, that you do it for at least 6 minutes a day. As I said, that brings health benefits for a week. So whether that's looking away from your screen out the window, having something inside where you are, planting a herb on your windowsill, growing potatoes in a bucket, it doesn't matter. It's very important that you connect to nature because you're actually then connecting to yourself because nature is in our DNA. It's part of us and it has been ever since the beginning. So it's not just a new fad, it's actually been around for thousands of years. The research that backs up and the science that backs up the benefit of nature is now coming to the fore. The University of Derby, I think it is talking about our nature connectedness and how important that is. So it's only coming to the fore, but do connect with nature in whatever way works best for you every day.
Amazing, amazing. Once again, thanks a lot, Maya, for coming and sharing your thoughts and helping us get more closer to nature today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And listeners, if you have any queries, any questions for Maria, we will be putting up her, LinkedIn profile in our description below, and also the link to her, company page, Your True Own Nature. So you can reach out to her over there, or you can leave a DM to us or drop an email to us. And then also, we run an initiative called We Are Listening, where we help you vent out anonymously. It's a mental health anonymous forum. So if you're feeling stressed, anxious, and the only reason is you're not finding an ear there where you can vent out, we are the place, and the link for that is available in the description below. Thanks a lot, everyone.